Cian Corla. I want to thank Minister Zappone for bringing this issue to light, but I think we have to say that what we've seen here, or what we are seeing here, is yet another bombshell exposing the toxic relationship between church and state in this country and the human damage and hardship that it has imposed and continues to impose on very significant numbers of people. In this case, at this point, and it's clear that this is likely to be the tip of the iceberg, 126 people who have had their identities stolen and their welfare, particularly in terms of their health, compromised, unless they know their proper heritage, biological heritage. I have to say I was particularly struck by this scandal as I was adopted via the St. Patrick's Guild in the years affected. I don't actually know if I'm one of the cases involved. Probably not, but I have questions now, as do other members of my family, both adoptive and birth families, and thousands more have very serious questions to ask or are living in ignorance of their true heritage and are going to have events visited on them that are life-changing. Now, in some cases, those life-changing experiences can be very positive. I was certainly lucky in my case that has been the case, but in others, for others, it is very, very traumatic, very scary, and literally turns your life upside down. It is absolutely critical that, having now finally revealed this, that we respond urgently but with sensitivity to the needs and demands of those who are affected. And let's be clear, the Adoption Rights Alliance, the Mother and Baby Coalition are furious. They're furious, Taoiseach, because what they say is this has been known for 20 years and nothing has been done about it. That even people who spoke about this and were aware of it in opposition then came into government and did absolutely nothing about it. And when issues were raised during the Adoptions Bill, first introduction in here about illegal versus supposedly incorrect registrations, and credit is due to Deputy Claire Daly in this regard, that these issues were not properly dealt with, meaning that some of the people affected here are still not certain will they gain access to information about their adoption because it's not a legal adoption. It's not registered properly as a legal adoption. And thousands more in the US and so on. So, Taoiseach, we need to engage with the alliances, with the people affected, and seek their advice to act on things they've been demanding for 20 years. And very serious questions lie over the Sisters of Charity's responsibility for all of this. Certainly I would like reassurances, and I've been getting emails in recent weeks, assurances about their continued role in the National Maternity Hospital.
Deputy, the time
so there are very serious questions that need to be answered, assurances given and action taken.
Please.
Thanks. On the second point you raised, as I said in response to others, you're absolutely right. And as Fergus Finlay said this morning, this doesn't come as a surprise. People have been aware of illegal registrations, illegal adoptions in Ireland for a very long time, perhaps longer than 20 years. The number of people who participated in it, often the receiving parents, must add up to tens of thousands of people. And when a new child arrives in the family without the mother being pregnant, there must have been very widespread knowledge across our society of the existence of this practice, and that it was in fact commonplace in the past. And as I said before, journalists have written about it, the Adoption Rights Alliance and others have raised it. It's been raised in the Dáil and Seanad. What is different now is that because of the analysis of these records, there was this marker on the records, adopted from birth, and because of that, it was possible to identify from those records the fact that these people had been falsely registered in the way they were registered as the birth child of parents who were not actually their birth parents. It may be harder to find evidence of other cases because this was concealed. Records may not exist, or records may be falsified, but we have to do our best to find out as much information as we can and to give it to the people who have a right to that information and always had a right to that information. The right to know your birth story, the right to know your identity, the right to know where you came from, who your parents are, and indeed, as the Deputy said, the right to information about your medical history and your family medical history. I know that there are a lot of people, more 13,000, 14,000 people who have come through St Patrick's Guild and must have a lot of questions and must be concerned. What I can say to people who have come through St Patrick's Guild is that if they have an adoption order, they are not affected by this. They are not one of the 126 people. Or if they were born before 1946 or after 1969, again, they are not affected. However, if they were born between 1946 and 1969 and do not have an adoption order, well, then they may well be affected by this. And obviously conversations will need to be had with their own family members in the weeks and months ahead. And there's the possibility, of course, that they may be contacted by TUSA. Minister Sapone has met with the Abortion Rights Alliance. She is very willing to do so again. We are very determined to pass the legislation that deputies have raised. But the most important thing we need to focus on now is giving our fellow citizens, those people who were affected by this, information about their true identities, and that is absolutely going to be the priority in this period ahead. And if it is a mammoth task, if it is only the tip of an iceberg, well, so be it. We have a duty to our citizens to do right by them, and we will.
Taoiseach, I welcome the commitments. I was born in '67, so I don't know, I may be affected. I'm going to have to check all this. But as I said, the outcome for me in any event has been positive, but for huge numbers of other people that may not be the case, and they have the right to know. And we need a clear commitment that all obstacles will be removed to the access to whatever information, whatever files can be found. All obstructions must be removed. And, you know, for example, I understand, and I wouldn't mind your comments on this, that issues around indemnity, when St Patrick's Guild was asked for its files, there were issues around indemnity. They incredibly asked for €50,000 in 2016 in order to facilitate the handover of the files. Were they given indemnities? I certainly hope not. And this is where, by the way, because St Patrick's Guild is physically beside St Vincent's Hospital, okay? I went there to meet my birth mother. And the issue of the maternity hospital, as I understand it, we need clear assurances that the Sisters of Charity will have no influence whatsoever in the clinical practice of the National Maternity Hospital, but even, I believe, there's still a row about the title deeds, land ownership. Now, I mean, that's really a bit much, isn't it? You know, these people who essentially for the last few weeks have been saying how much they cared about unborn life, showed scant regard for born children and their welfare, lied, covered up, acted criminally, and they're still trying to milk the state for money or retain ownership over certain assets.
Over time now.
We need clear assurances and action on those sort of things.
Can you conclude this matter?
The new National Maternity Hospital will be paid for by the state and will be owned by the state. It will be paid for by the people and it will belong to the people. That is not the case for the current National Maternity Hospital in Holles Street, so it will be a significant change for the better in that regard. I don't know about the issue of indemnity, but I do know that we have all the records, and I think it's a good thing that in the past couple of years tens of thousands of records have been transferred from private bodies, from charities, from adoption agencies to public bodies. And it's because of that transfer of records that we've been able to come up with this information, this new information, in the last recent periods. In terms of the next steps regarding the other adoption agencies, as I mentioned, there will be a targeted sampling exercise carried out in the first instance. This will take about 4 months and will be overseen by a quality assured independent reviewer. It's going to be headed up by Marion Reynolds, who is a former Deputy Director of Social Services in Northern Ireland and has expertise in this area. Once that is done, once that targeted sampling exercise is done, if it is appropriate and right, we will then go on to carry out a full audit of all the records.